sitting here at the ABCA in the lobby, anytime you can pull somebody to the side of the American Baseball Coaches Association meeting and have an opportunity to sit and listen, wanted to get you, Zan, to come on in and talk about something that most people would ignore. I mean, I'd say probably 30 years ago you wouldn't see specialty offensive lineman camps, and now you have specialty catching, right, in baseball. And that's what you specialize in, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. We were at dinner last night, and we have this buddy of ours who's doing a lot of teaching with the ground ground forces in baseball, but he knows nothing about the game. Okay, he just knows rotary, and he goes, so a catcher's like a drummer in the band. You know when they're not there. They're the goofy guy that plays along, but you can replace him in an instant. And there were 3 catchers sitting there at dinner, and they were like, no.
That didn't go over too
well. That didn't go too well. But tell me about the importance from the role of the catcher, and then what you do to develop the winning strategies of a catcher.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've always said I thought, being a catcher, I think it's the most fun position to play at a young age because you get to put the gear on. It's cool. You get to suit up. You feel like a warrior. But you're also more involved in the game. Every pitch you're in, there's balls in the dirt. You get to throw balls at second. You're walking out talking to the pitcher. So you're super involved. And then as you advance, it becomes even more important. And one of the important things that's going on right now in the professional level are the analytics. The technology has finally caught up to really be able to put a quantitative number on a catcher's receiving metrics, and they can tell, this catcher receives and he's, 1.2 runs per game better than this guy. Where in the past it just takes, a keen eye and you think this guy is good, this guy is bad. But it's a very subjective, analysis where now with the technology is catching up, it's starting in the big leagues and it's trickling down to the younger guys, and it's causing some big changes. So it's really cool.
Historically, I grew up catching. My dad was a catcher in college, but then I switched to pitching. I love catching since the fact that, to your point, you're in every play. Like you're in the middle of it, you're doing it. And then I started pitching more, and it was too hard to do both. And so when I went to high school, I just focused on pitching. But it's fascinating because it used to be you get the best receiver behind the plate, but it was usually kind of a stockier kid.
Yep.
A kid, the durability, right? Maybe he didn't have the foot speed to play the outfield. But now you see the catchers. That's not true. I mean, you're seeing major athletes behind the dish. I mean, we know catching is a major athletic feat, and not everybody can do it. But what is, when you look at it and say, okay, here are maybe the pyramid of success of a great catcher, and then how do we train those different factors to be a run saver or a producer?
Yeah, well, and you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of guys get stuck behind the plate at a young age just because they don't have the mobility, they don't have the athleticism. And let's face it, you don't really have to run around. You can hide somebody behind the plate at a young age, where you start to get older, you just can't do that.
Yeah,
the athleticism starts to come out. And one of the things that I focused on the past couple of years is, yes, the skill aspect, the receiving, the blocking, the throwing, that stuff is very important. But how we train the actual athlete, I feel like has changed over the past couple of years for the better. When I was growing up, when I was playing, there was no talk about an ankle mobility program. What's this guy's hip mobility like? What's his stability like in the stance? And when we start to address some of these issues, I think we have a lot of room for improvement for guys at the young age, and that's what the guys at the top are starting to do. Just focus on the athleticism more.
Almost like specialty goalie training. Right?
Absolutely.
Because they got their own stretching program, and I worked with a professional goalie for a while, and every morning he had a 30 to 45-minute yoga stretching routine that was so specific to being able to do things in a certain way. I mean, that's a third baseman's not doing that.
Yeah, and it's a very similar skill set. A hockey goalie and a catcher are very similar, which, yes, they're both wearing gear, but it goes a lot deeper than that. A lot of the movements are the same, blocking balls in the dirt, how they need to use their shin guards or so or glove to, stop a puck that's coming 100 miles an hour. So there's a lot of similarities there, and the movements are very similar as well.
What are the leadership requirements in your mind? Because I look back at my playing career, our catchers were typically the captain of the field.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But let's see, my freshman year we had a catcher who hit 25 home runs. He was a power hitter playing catcher, and he did a good job catching. Then we moved to another guy who wasn't the best hitter, but my God, he was the best receiver I think I've ever seen in my life. And he was big. He was 6'3", 245, cannon of an arm, Cuban guy.
Yeah.
And then we kind of switched a little bit and more moved with that. It was a fun throwing to that guy because he was big. He covered the zone. His hand, from a leadership standpoint, though, he demanded respect.
Sure.
Like, as a pitcher, I want to be in control when I'm on the mound, but I knew that he had me.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think a big part of that is, one, the work ethic, and that's the pitching staff, they need to know the catcher he's there for them. It's a very servant leadership type role. You can't have an ego and be a great catcher. You have to be there. I'm here to serve the pitchers. I don't care if I get the glory, they get the glory. I just want to win some ball games. So I think that's a big part of it. I've always liked as a coach guys who are more extroverted. Now, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely have guys who have success that are introverted, extroverted, all different personality types. But for me, it seems like the guys who are willing to get out there and communicate and be loud and work with guys and quickly, be able to make decisions, those are the guys who have more success, I think. I also think that you can have two different personalities. You can have an on-the-field personality versus your at-home personality. If you want to be introverted and play video games and read books and stay at home on Friday night, that's perfectly fine. But when the lights are on and you step between the lines, then it's time to take charge. You can't just sit there and not say anything. You have to be able to speak up when you see something, whether it be a positioning change or a hitter, or you need to communicate with the pitching coach. Whatever it is, you just have to be able to talk about it.
From a perspective of as a catcher for you when you were playing, how hard is it to adjust to each different pitcher? Because we don't take that into account. I mean, we see the uniqueness that a pitcher has on a hitter, but you've got to receive it.
Sure.
So there's so many individual. How did you adjust to that as a player?
I think in a team setting, it's not extremely difficult because you're spending so much time together. But where you see now in the amateur baseball ranks, where a lot of times these guys are playing with different teammates every weekend. We're playing in a big tournament in Atlanta, and we're going to fly half our guys in from California, and some are coming from Florida and Texas, and you're catching guys who you've never seen before. I mean, you literally met them an hour before the game, and that's when it gets to be really challenging. And you're a college team, and you've spent an entire fall with a group of guys. You seem to know those guys pretty well, but the younger guys.
Is it the arm slot, the ball movement? What is it?
All the above. I would say the movement mostly. Even just knowing some tendencies. Sometimes guys have a tendency to cut the ball. If you're expecting a fastball and you think it's going to run, but it cuts on you instead, that's where you get your thumb blown up a lot.
Right.
So just knowing things like that, and then also knowing their personality and what they like to throw. What's their best pitch? Sometimes what do they think is their best pitch, but it's really not their best pitch. A lot of guys think that, oh man, I got to go to my curveball. My curveball's good today. When you can look at the pitching coach and be like, curveball's not too hot.
Not too hot. What do you when you're out there in that relationship with the coach? Okay, and you played for a catcher, and Mike Bianco, who was assistant coach at LSU, played at LSU as a catcher, caught one of probably the finest pitching staffs, short of UCLA's pitching staff, when they had multiple first-rounders. That had to be difficult because I know spending a lot of time with Basham in the office, he talks about how hard Mike was on the catchers.
Yeah.
For you, playing for a guy who was an all-SEC catcher, controlled that, that had to be a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that. I don't want to say he was hard to play for in a negative way at all, but he definitely had high expectations, which I think makes you a better player. And I can personally relate a lot of the things that I've learned back when I was in college and playing for him. And huge influence on my catching and coaching style. So I learned a lot. But, high expectations, I think that's a good thing. I think in any organization that really wants to succeed, have to set the bar high and then try to meet those.
How do you take that and then help parents deal with their junior kids? There's so much pressure on our junior athletes, okay, and you're immersed in the baseball world. You're helping these kids get looks. You're helping these kids build platforms and portfolios that college coaches go, okay, that's somebody that I can bring in. How do you manage that pressure and that expectation? Because many times they don't want you to be the a-hole.
Yep.
They want you to be the supporter or the developer. How do you handle that?
I think one thing I learned a long time ago is the best method is always honesty. And you're never rude about it. You're never short about it, but you need to be honest with the parents. If I'm an instructor or I'm a coach, I need to tell them what I think. And, maybe it's I think this kid has potential to this. I think his role for our team is going to be this. Sometimes they don't like to hear that. It doesn't always go over very well. A lot of times I'd say it doesn't go very well.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to have a good relationship with them and you want to build a relationship on trust, you've got to do that. So for my role now, where I'm working with younger guys who are in high school and they're trying to get seen or get signed by colleges, or even the guys who are a little bit older who are trying to get drafted in a pro ball, you got to be honest with them, number one. And I think you should let the parents understand that, hey, this is the kid's journey. I get it. You want to give your kid every opportunity in the world. You want them to have every opportunity they have to let them, be in a position to have success. But at the same time, this is their journey. Be there for them, support them. The pressure they don't need is coming from the parents. If after the game, if they're riding home and they're getting grilled by mom or dad, that's not helping anybody out.
Do you think the travel ball world is good? I mean, a catcher, you may catch multiple games in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, is it? There's two sides to it, right? Baseball's like a diesel engine; it needs a lot of cranking to get going, and you know what you're doing. But is the travel ball world? I mean, have we tipped the point of maybe not being good there?
You know,
you and I both benefit from the niche industry. I mean, look, I'm not complaining about how we make our living, but we are benefactors of it. But
I don't. You know, I hate to say it's good or it's bad. I think there are good aspects of it, and I think there are bad aspects of it. You know, I think it's too big personally, and I think most people agree with me that, you know, most guys that are 13, 14, 15, even 17 years old, they don't need to be playing year-round. You know, you listen to all the guys in the medical world, which I defer to them, you know, for the arm injuries and the pitch counts and all that sort of stuff. They all agree that a youth player should have some period, some window each year where they're taken completely off from throwing or playing, and it can be from 6 weeks to 8 weeks. But you and I both know that's not happening. I mean, there's no amateur player that's taken 2 months off and not playing at all. So in that regard, I think it's bad. Right. I do think there are some benefits of playing year-round. I mean, I think, you know, I don't know if the 10,000-hour rule is, so to speak, you know, perfectly put together. But the more you play, the more you're working on your skills.
The better your instincts are, the better you're moving, the better. Yeah,
absolutely. But it's funny, you know, I was talking to a guy yesterday about it. They were at a showcase last week. That's like, I don't know when this is going to go on the air, but this is like the week after Christmas now.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, what the hell they do in playing
the week of Christmas, they're having a showcase, and there's like pitchers throwing, and I'm scratching my head thinking, like, what pitcher is even in shape, ready to throw a bullpen right now?
So we got a kid going out there giving everything they've got on a 60% readied body. Yeah. So the equivalent is taking a car and not having the shocks and the struts juiced in and saying, go ride it. You can go do the drag race once, but you can't take the bumps in the road, and then what's the wear down on that? Yeah.
So overall, man, I don't think I don't love the direction it's gone. I think it's kind of a necessary evil, and you have to try to figure out, you know, what's the right balance for me and my family and my situation.
Let's shift gears. I want to come back to catching a little bit, but the other thing I find fascinating is, and as a compliment, is you built a social media presence and an online academy in a world that's not easy to do that. There's a lot of people out there who say they could. What were the keys of your success there? I mean, how did you do that?
Well, kind of referencing what I said a minute ago, I think being honest is one, and I don't mean just honest with, you know, my customers or honest with whoever, but I think everything you say and do is a representation of you. I know for me personally that I'm never going to meet 99.5% of the people who ever visit my website or whoever see me on Twitter or whoever, you know, send a Facebook message to. So I try to create my online presence and know that might be the only touch. That's the only way this person gets to know me. So I've tried to do it as well as I can and have a professional looking brand and putting my best self out there, but also knowing that, you know, it may sound cheesy or may sound corny, but there's very few people who have successfully built their brand around being like the jerk online. You know, there's a lot of people who want to be the bully and they think it's cool.
The short term, it seems to work though.
Yeah.
See it in my field all the time. Somebody gets on there and they pick a fight with the established folks, and then they get some followers out of it. But you can watch them, and they just fade away. I mean, when they lose that asshole mentality, they're gone.
Yeah. Well, good. So, one, I didn't know if this podcast was censored or not, so I can say it.
You can go with it. All we have to do is put an E on it. All right.
Perfect. But, yeah, I mean, you see these people that, like, they take pride in being the asshole.
Yeah.
And, like, to me, that's just not who I want to be. You know, I realize that most people I'm working with, it's youth catchers, but it's also the parents of youth catchers. And I'm trying to put myself out there that people would want to work with me. People want to be around me and just, you know.
How did you make a decision to go into this, though? Because as many of my former teammates, right, you know, if I go back to Baton Rouge, I see he's like, oh, so-and-so's giving lessons. So-and-so, it's funny. It's like lawn care lessons, okay? But I'm not going to say they're super successful, okay, because they're lacking some. Okay, my teammates are listening to this going, dude, he's talking about me. No, I'm not. I'm making a generalization. Yeah. But people aren't successful. I mean, you're running a business. This isn't like just, hey, I'm giving some lessons on the side. I'm taking cash, and I can go get my, you know, hang out for a couple of years until I figure out what the hell I want to do with my life. This is a career difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And you know, the first thing I would say to that is it's taken a long time. I think it's easy for people to look and say, oh, man, this guy has X amount of followers, or his website looks like this, or he's charging this for a camp or whatever. But, I mean, I've been online since 2005, I guess. I started a Twitter and started my online business, and, you know, the LLC started in 2008. So I've literally spent 11 years building this brand, building this business. And it happened slowly. I mean, in the beginning, I had one product, and it didn't sell very well, and it was super seasonal.
What was it?
It was a catcher's thumb. It's a great product. So it's a product that it protects a catcher's thumb. You get, like we talked about earlier, a pitcher may throw a two-seamer, you get your thumb beat up. Okay. Well, at first I know it was a great product because I needed it. All catchers, getting thumb hurts like hell. So you put this plastic guard on you, protects your thumb. Okay, so at first the word didn't get out about it. It was a good product, didn't get the word out. Okay, and then I started realizing I've got to get the word out. So I started creating some YouTube videos, and I put this, this is sponsored by Catcher'sThumb.com. Check them out. And so once those videos started picking up some views, I started getting more traffic. And so it started to become a little bit more of a business, but we were only getting sales during baseball season. And I start to see a very big wave. As soon as baseball season's over, sales are over.
It's like a fireworks stand.
That's it. Yeah. They're done. And so for then I thought, okay, well, I've got all this information. I love to coach. I love to teach. Why shouldn't I just put together some resources like books and videos? And now it became more of a less seasonal business, to where in the off season now I have off-season training programs. During the season I have arm care maintenance programs, or have catcher's thumbs, things like that. So it's taken a long time and a lot of products. I think I've got 30-something DVDs probably, and I don't know, probably 20 other different products. I came out with a product earlier in the month, and there's just always something that is coming out. Or
is that an entrepreneurial mindset for you? I mean, do you is that, like, one of the things I love about doing what I do is I want to solve the problems that other people struggle with.
Yep.
Okay. So, but I sometimes struggle with the accountability of what it takes to do it. I mean, not the time to do it. Did it actually meet? Did I hold myself to the standard, and like learning what the customer wants? Because, like you said, you had a great product. It solved your need, the catcher's thumb, but people didn't know it was an issue.
Yep.
I mean, you got to almost tell them, it's like, it's almost like seeing a marketing ad. Hey, catchers, you're going to have an arthritic thumb in 15 years.
Yeah.
This will save it. You can't make that claim, but you get my point.
Yeah, for sure.
So is that just like an inventor mindset?
I just like to build things, whether it be a following or a product. I get a lot of enjoyment of seeing a product done or a project done start to finish. So the most recent thing I did, like I referenced a second ago, it's a throwing journal. A lot of people have seen productivity planners. It's a notebook that has calendars in it, has guidelines in it, but people chart their throwing. And there's a lot of different things that go into what makes somebody a successful or a hard thrower. It's not just how much did you throw today. Well, what was your nutrition like? What was your strength training program like? How much sleep do you get? Are you hydrated? So it lets you track all these things, and hopefully the player just starts to take more accountability of more small things. So maybe instead of them getting 6 hours of sleep a night, they're making a conscious effort to get between 7 and 8. Yeah. Maybe they're making a conscious effort to drink a little bit more water. And hopefully a lot of these small things add up to make a big difference over time. But so putting this planner together, man, it took a long time. It took me like 2 years.
Really?
So it started, and then you take a little bit of time off, and then you get it to be 90% done, and the last 10% takes about 80% of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're seeing it from the beginning and seeing it finish, it's just very enjoyable for me. And then getting feedback from people like saying, this is awesome, my son can't wait to start using this, he can't wait to start tracking it. Or when I get an email from a parent said, my son made the high school team because we've been watching him doing your drills. To me, that's like the most satisfying thing in the world. So,
what are the key to that point, making the high school team? A kid wants to go to college, okay? There's only so many catcher spots.
Yeah.
And usually catchers are not the most versatile. I don't mean that in a bad way. If you're really good as a catcher, we can hide you in left field.
Sure.
But your skill set is glorified where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, behind the mount. I mean, I say this. I can take a left fielder, move him to right field. We can adjust. Catcher, there's only one of those positions.
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody who's 14 right now, it's like, what do you need to do to be seen at the next level, to be that guy that is a successful catcher type?
Yeah, well, you definitely need to get out there. There are showcase type things. Okay. The analogy I always use is there's a lot of people who they need piano lessons. They don't necessarily need to be in a piano recital.
Okay.
So let's first develop the skills, and then once your skills are at a level where we feel like they can be showcased, then let's go put you in front of people. But if you're 13, 14, 15, and you're an average player, so to speak, you probably don't need to be going and showing every college coach in the Southeast that you're average. We need to wait until we develop something a little bit better. So I think it's more of a time to focus on development than it is showcasing. So that's a big one for me. There's a lot of different things that can be done, like talking about going to these tournaments, going to the showcases and whatnot, but it's really figuring out what's important and putting together a development plan. I will say one other thing to that note. A lot of people need to be open-minded about, what is a good opportunity. I know when I was growing up, it seemed like growing up as a baseball player in Mississippi, you want to play at Mississippi State or you want to play at Ole Miss, and that's kind of the end of it. Maybe you want to play at Southern Miss, not knocking those guys, but you're an SEC fan, you want to play in the SEC. Well, at the time, I had torn my ACL my junior year. I wasn't good enough to go be an SEC Division I player straight out of high school. So I went to a junior college, which ended up being one of the best decisions of my life, where I got to go play and develop for a couple of years, got an associate's degree, and then I was able to translate that to a 4-year program that I was really proud to go play at and enjoyed and had every part. But I think there's a lot of people that, going to a junior college it's not the sexy thing to do. You tell a 15-year-old, hey, we're going to get you to go to this JUCO, and you'll be better because of it.
I tell people that, too, because, I'll hear kids say, I want to play in college, whatever it is. I'm like, well, where do you want to play?
Yeah.
Like, that's always my first question. Well, I want to play at the SEC schools. Well, there's only 14.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're at the top of the heap. Now, that doesn't mean you can't.
And there's some good dudes there.
There's some good dudes. I mean, you got to be different. And I'm almost shy when I tell people I play there because it's like I was, like, below average. Like, no way today I'd be recruited by, even some of the schools around there in my high school. But I'm thankful some people win the lottery. I did.
There you go.
Okay. But I'm like, open your mind. I always tell people, you can transfer. I would never tell that on the front end. You need reps. You need experience. You need to win where you're at. And some people, there's a guy that I work with in the golf industry who's extremely, extremely honest with his kids. And he goes, your ranking is this. The average ranking at the Division I SEC level is this. You ain't that.
Yeah.
I can send you there. You're going to get run over, miserable, and you're going to want to leave. But you got the bag.
Yeah.
Okay. You got
That's
the gear.
it, yeah.
Okay. You can say it. I'd rather you go to this level school, develop it in a year or two. If you get really, really good and you're winning every tournament, then you want to transfer, go for it. Baseball allows that junior college route. I highly recommend the junior college route. I don't, I redshirted. I stayed. That was important for me because I needed to be around the pitchers like, Chad Auger, Mike Soroka, Paul Burt, all major league pitchers who taught me the game. But I often wonder if I'd gone JUCO, if I had gotten to throw, how much faster my velocity would have risen because I had a lot of reps.
Yeah.
I had a lot of in-game adrenalines. When you start seeing the radar gun light up, it's like, oh, I can do that. Here it comes again.
Yeah.
Type of stuff.
I loved my junior college experience.
Yeah.
It was 2 great years. Still very close to my old teammates. I saw a few of them earlier this weekend. We catch up and give them a hug and see them. And
where'd you go?
Holmes Community College.
Okay.
A small school about 45 minutes north of Jackson, Mississippi, where I grew up. And then, like I said, Ole Miss is a little bit north of there. But had a great time there. And I can say for a fact, I went to a small high school in Mississippi. I was not ready for Division I baseball out of high school. I might have thought I was, but looking back, I can see that, man, that was 2 good years that I got a lot of reps and got to play and got a lot of practice in, and it was very beneficial for me.
Who's your gold standard, 2 or 3 catchers that you look at and say, do it the right way?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Number
Who's
of
your
guys.
models?
Well, I would say this. So, this conversation is probably shifted a little bit, but the guys I really liked when I was growing up, Pudge Rodriguez. He was the guy. If you grew up in the 90s, like Pudge Rodriguez was the guy.
Yeah, see, I loved Tony Pena before that.
Okay. All right.
Cannon of an arm.
Good arm, yeah.
Yeah, great arm, flexible. But then I love Pudge.
Pudge. I think everybody, Yachty, he's got to be in everybody's top 2 or 3. Whether you kind of like him or you really like him, it's hard to argue, the success he has. He's really good.
Yeah.
Another guy, I even like watching Salvador Perez. I know he's had some injuries as of recently, but fun guy to watch. I like Wilson Contreras, with the Cubs. He's a guy that he some of his skills aren't where some other guys are, but he does some athletic things that are just freaky. The way that guy moves, the way he throws, man, he's fun to watch. Just bounces around, plays with emotion. He's not faking anything. He's playing with emotion, getting out there, and you know exactly what he's thinking just by looking at his face.
So it's funny. We just mentioned 4 Hispanic catchers.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe 5. The kids that are coming from the Dominican, the kids are coming from the Hispanic cultures. When I was playing, we used to look at the middle infielders, and it's because they grew up playing on infields that weren't smooth, so they had unbelievable hand-eye coordination.
Sure.
May not have hit ball with power. Pitchers tended to come out with the same type of 3/4 throwing motion Pedro Martinez-esque. You could see a lot of similarities. Is that what you see in the catching world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, and that's just my preference. That,
I like that.
But when, I mentioned earlier, I like guys who are extroverted.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if you were to
The
stereotype
Hispanic
a guy,
catcher is,
a lot of times the guy, they're loud, they're getting out front, they're not scared to make a statement.
Well, the reason, so the catcher that we had that I came in with as a freshman, his name was Adrian Antonini. And he was a state champion wrestler. He was flexible, but he was Cuban descendant.
Mm-hmm.
Spoke 4 languages.
Wow.
And he would be he grew up in Miami. He played with A-Rod came in just behind him at his school at Westminster, but he was so good because he was so extroverted.
Yeah.
And he wanted you to go. He wanted you to steal on him. He wanted it because he had a cannon of an arm.
Yep.
He knew it, and he wanted you to see it. He wanted to show it off. He wanted to frame. He wanted to own that relationship with the umpire.
Yeah.
And it was cool when you said that extroversion. I knew exactly what you're talking about. It's like they're in control in the command. It's like a quarterback who's like, I'm in control.
Yeah.
Watch this.
Yeah, I like that. When I watch football games, I like the guys who, you can hear the quarterback audible on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Those dudes are loud. Like there's
60,000
or 70, 100,000 people there, and you can still hear them on the microphones when they're calling an audible. Like those are the dudes who are. They're in it. They're not shy. They're getting after it. So I like catchers similarly.
Yeah. Are you a reader? People always ask me like mental game books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't read mental game books. I love to read books that come from a different generation, different genre. Like I want to read a biography of a soldier. I want to read somebody who has overcome major things. What do you like to read when you're teaching? Like, are you reading? I'm sure there's not a whole lot of catching books.
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I like to read a lot.
Okay.
I probably read. There's definitely people that read more than me, but I probably read 20 books a year. So I read fairly. I read a lot. But they're all different. I think you can take different lessons from different topics. Like you said, a warrior or a W coach. I probably read very few sports books. It's just I like to read business books. I like to read psychology books. I like economics. The book I'm reading right now is called Don't Shoot the Dog, and it's about behavioral change. And it's phenomenal. It basically the author. I don't know her exact title and credentials, but she would train animals, like go to SeaWorld and train the lions and train the dolphins and train the orcas to do the flips and do these things. And she talks about the different methods to use to train, the animals.
Yeah.
But the methods can be used on training your children to put their dish in the sink or the dishwasher after they eat. Or if you're training a player, this is what we're going to do in practice. This is our style. This is our method. How do you train them? And it's not manipulating people, but it is called shaping, behavioral shaping.
Yeah.
So really cool. I'm only about halfway through it right now, but I've already gotten more takeaways from that book, and it's phenomenal. So I read a lot of books like that aren't necessarily, baseball or coaching, but you have takeaways if you're just willing to, try to think in, how can I connect the dots? How can I relate this to that?
I often use, as a psychologist, I often use the principles of how you train a dog to go out the same way we should train our kids, right? It's consistent, it's unemotional, it's whatever. So I'll have to pick that book up. Where are we going with baseball? I had a conversation with one of y'all's alum, but one of my dear friends, David DeLucci, who David is very concerned as a former Major League player that we're losing the disadvantaged kid in baseball. We're not the kids who don't have the financial means to do travel ball, to spend an $8,000 summer budget to make sure they got 6 uniforms, to travel to different places. We're losing those kids. We're losing them to basketball. We're losing them to football. We're losing them to soccer because it doesn't cost the level of entry so low.
Yeah.
From your perspective, are we getting into a spot? The game is such a brilliant game. It's a hard game to watch on ESPN now because it's too slow, takes so long. 2 years ago, ESPN softball College World Series outrated ESPN baseball.
Yeah.
Because it was faster. Where are we going with the game? The game that formed us.
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know. I think there's definitely a lot of issues, whether it be with the pace of play issue or all the other, things in the amateur baseball combined. I don't know. And some days I think it's going in a positive direction. Some days I think it's going in a negative direction. Like the automated strike zone. For me, a catching guy.
What do you think about that?
That's been a huge topic. And what do you think? Is it good? Is it bad? Honestly, I think most people are surprised by my response. Most people think, oh, you're a catching guy, you should hate the automated strike zone. It's all about receiving pitches and fooling umpires and this and that. And there is an art to that, and there's we grew up loving that and teaching that, and there's something to that. But at the same time, I want the game to be true and honest and fair. And if there's a way to make the strike zone perfect and never miss a pitch, I have a hard time arguing that. Yeah. So the way it is right now, I don't think the technology is 100% perfectly there yet. But again, 5 years ago, I don't think TrackMan was there yet either. You look at how StatCast has changed in the past couple of years. I'm kind of waiting in the wings.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily pro. I'm not necessarily anti. But I think in the near future, it's going to be extremely reliable. And at that point, if you have a way to make the game, perfectly fair between the two teams, how is that a bad
Look,
thing?
I'm all about an automatic strike zone. It brings back the top half of the strike zone.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to have a fair strike zone, let's allow the ball to be up in the zone and called a strike, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the issues. Let people know where to find you. How do they find you?
Yeah, appreciate it. So most of the places online, I'm just at Zan Barksdale.
Okay.
My catching,
XAN.
XAN Barksdale. Website is catching-101.com. I like to say this. I'm all over the place. If you're looking for me and you can't find me, that's a problem.
Right.
So,
Right.
But if you Google me, you'll be able to find me. And my wife hates me for it, but I'm constantly on my phone replying to emails and replying to
Business,
DMs and
man.
replying to tweets.
It's business.
And I'm just connecting with people. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you try to get in touch with me and you can't, I'll be disappointed.
Okay. Thanks for doing this.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been fun.
Got it.